Hey, we're live. This is episode 170. Can you believe that? 170 episodes of This Life in Tech with me, Jason.
The calming factor for everyone, Dan.
And I'm still TK.
So two of us have updated haircuts.
I don't. I was going to go get one yesterday because the barbershop that I've been going to for quite a while has opened. But when I inquired about the status, they said it was a zoo in there. So I figured I'd wait till sometime next week.
I got pretty frustrated yesterday. And I don't mind long hair. I don't like the sides coming out. You know what I mean? I just don't like that aesthetic.
Yep.
My head's already round enough. You know what I mean? And I told my wife, I think it's time for me just to get the clippers out again. Because, like, Dan, you know that. That's what I did when I was doing my doctorate. I didn't have much money, and I didn't really know where to go anyway in Maryland to get my hair cut. And so I just bought a cheap pair of clippers and cut it myself. And I did that for a long time. And so I thought to myself yesterday, it's getting hot. I'd gone running and sweated a lot. I'm like, I'm just going to clip it. And my wife's like, no, let me cut it. Okay, well, I'm probably going to end up where I want to anyway, so let's just go. Dude, she did a good job. I told her exactly what I wanted.
Ability to follow simple instructions, one of the most underrated skills in life.
Yeah, right? I told her, look, let's just get it wet, and all you got to do is grab it as if you were like pull me up by it, and you'll see the lines and just shave up to those lines, not past them, right up to them. Perfect.
I'm surprised you don't have like a top knot yet.
Hey, we'll see. We'll see where this leads. It's all leading towards somewhere, isn't it? If you're paying attention.
Yes, sir.
Oh, man. So you guys want some chicken updates first? Get this out of the way?
Yes, we always want to know what's going on with the coop.
All right, man. So the chickens now for at least half the week have been over in the coop, the 4 original chickens, and they're doing great. They really, really like being in a bigger space because now they're big enough they could hop out of their box anyway. So we built them like a little ramp that they can go up and down because they stay inside the coop. We're not letting them outside yet. They're too small. But they have like a coop inside of the coop, and they come in and out and they play and stuff like that. The rest of the chickens show up this week. So I'll try to take some video and put it up maybe on my YouTube channel. But my mealworms came. This is what I'm most excited about. The farms are inside the house right now because they're not done being set up. But man, who would have thought that 1,000 mealworms fits in like a little tub? It's like that big. But dude, those guys eat a lot. They came in because they eat the thing they live in, right? It's just oats and bran and oatmeal, right? That's what they live in, the substrate, but they eat it. And in 2 days, man, they chewed through almost everything in that container. No.
How do you know there's 1,000 in there?
There's probably more, but when I take them out to put them in the actual farm, I'll count them. And the reason why I want to count them is because I'm going to keep track of how they, let's say, breed. Because like I said, I think on average, most agricultural tables will tell you that each mealworm beetle will lay around 500 eggs. My math's based on 400. That'll vary depending on temperature and conditions. So the colder it is, the slower they go, the less eggs they lay. The warmer it is, the more they lay, the faster they go. It's kind of how it goes. But I'll count them because then I'm going to count the eggs.
This has been years ago, but when I used to get order mealworms for the lizards I had, like, oh, there's X amount in there, and you start going through it, and I'm like, well, hell, like 25% of these things are dead, so there might have been 1,000, but 250 are dead.
Yeah, right. And so the same thing like when we ordered the chickens, because the chickens come through the mail. We have to go to the post office to pick them up. And so you order 50. They tell you that they really ship like 55 or 56 because you assume about a 10% shrinkage on shipping.
Now, where did you get the original 4? Like down at your farm store type of thing? Like a farm bureau plate? Oh, that's awesome.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. We went down there to get some supplies. Like we needed some feed because when they're chicks, I mean, we're not going to let them roam for a couple weeks.
Right.
And so you have to have feed, and it's going to take me a couple months to get the mealworm farm up and running. And just some other things. You need a couple heat lamps just when they're little and stuff like that. And we went into like this mom and pop local feed store and they had chicks. My wife's like, "What do you think?"
That's
I'm like, well, dude, get a couple now and experiment, because it's not going to be that big of a deal if you lose 2 when there's only 2. I mean,
right.
you know, when you got 50.
If you lose 50% of the herd, I don't know. That's not boding well for once we expand, right?
Well, let's not learn at scale. Let's learn with a little dev environment.
Hey, isn't that what we're doing with COVID-19?
Well, would you do it this way if you had a choice? You don't always have a choice.
Oh,
I mean,
so.
had there not been any chicks there, then we would have learned on the fly at scale with 50 some chickens.
You'd have jumped out of the boat and said, "I'm going to teach myself how to swim."
Sometimes you gotta.
That's actually how I learned to swim when I was a little kid. I'm sure this lady probably was no bigger than 5'4", 5'5", but she seemed like a really big woman. He took me to the end of the diving board and chucked me in the pool at the YMCA when I was like 5 years old. Went to the bottom. I think it's probably time I get off here and start to figure out how I'm going to save myself.
Yep. Yeah, I learned that my brother and I learned to swim at the Y together. That's where all the kids went. And I don't remember there being floaties.
No.
I mean, there was a deep end and a shallow end, but yeah, you pretty much got tossed in.
Yeah. It's a life skill.
And even still, those floaties don't really work because they're on your arm. Your head can still go underwater. Like if you don't have like the thing on your chest, it doesn't really do anything.
I mean, look, man, I'm not advocating it. I don't know that I would react well if somebody did that to my daughter, but I get that it was a product of the time and place,
Yeah, no doubt.
I mean, I'm still shocked that in 1776 they had swimming pools.
I was waiting for it, Dan. I was like, "Here you go. It's on the tee. Take your big cut at it." I was with all the basketball dads the other day and said something about because they're all in there. Their daughters are predominantly the oldest children in the family, and obviously mine's the youngest. And I was old when they were born, or older. And one of them started giving me crap about my age, and I'm like, "Dude, you need to do a couple laps around the block and lose some weight before you start giving me shit." He's like, "You went right there, didn't you?" I'm like, "Hey, I do not start with small arms fire. I go right to nuclear when you're going to do it. It's a life lesson that cuts down on hassle."
Yeah, right?
Yeah,
right.
Sun Tzu said, never spar with a weaker opponent because you could get lazy and make a mistake. Remove them from the battlefield immediately.
Oh, I did.
Right. No, I think you're totally right. This is actually a good life lesson. I think there's something that's very positive about saying in certain aspects of my life, I'm willing to go from 0 to 100 instantaneously. Because if it's worth doing, it's worth going to 100%. And not slowly.
If it's worth doing, write this down, worldwide audience. If it's worth doing, it's worth overdoing. Mediocrity is for cowards.
Right.
Absolutely.
Well, I mean, if nothing else, how else are you going to learn where your limits are? Because that sets a bar, right? Nothing says you can't get better and past that bar, but you got to know where the bar is.
You got to know where the floor is. Right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Don't worry about the ceiling. You're going to keep climbing, but you got to know where the floor is, and you just need your floor to be one more floor above everybody else's at all times.
Yeah.
It's true. It's like when some of the folks at work will start to try to do a little bit of ribbing with me, and I'm like, I'm a professional. This is not the time for amateurs. Because then they never live it down. Like every day, I ask the one guy that works for me, "Are you wearing your brown shoes or your black shoes today?" Because when he wears his brown shoes, it's not good. So every time he makes a mistake, I'm like, "You must have been wearing your brown shoes again." And it's every time. He's like, "I'm not going to wear brown shoes anymore." I'm like, "You shouldn't, especially with a black belt."
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Oh, look at Ralph Lauren here.
Yeah.
So wait, let's explore this for a second, if you don't mind. Do you, in all seriousness, no bullshit, do you think there might be something to the fact that when that dude wakes up, he's not in the right frame of mind to do productive, good work, so he selects brown?
No, I don't. But he just happens to be one of my junior employees, and so sometimes he says silly things. Like, for an example, we're trying to move to multi-factor authentication for everything. I'm like, okay, great. You have a laptop, and we're using Duo. What if you're on a plane and you don't have a network connection? What's your fallback? And he's like, oh, I think this will be great. We'll create them a local username and password. I'm like, oh, so they don't remember their passwords now. So we're going to give them, and we're trying to get rid of passwords. And we're going to go do this. And I'm like, I said, so how are they going to call the help desk to get the local password reset? Because they're not going to remember it. Because maybe they're only on an airplane once every 30 days. He's like, oh, I didn't think this through. And I'm like, are you wearing your brown shoes again? But
hey, I mean,
you know, the wheel spinning.
Yeah, a little pat on the back for being vocal.
Yeah.
But maybe you should have been vocal inside your head to yourself first.
Yeah. So I said, Zachy, the best answer would have been, let me research this for a moment. And then get back to me.
Listen, I swear to God, man, that's one of the biggest lessons from if you even just brief through like Marcus Aurelius meditations and get into Stoicism just a little bit. Like lesson number 1, you do not have to react to everything.
Yeah, that's true.
But the old adage, people today listen to respond; they don't listen to understand. And if you're listening to react, it's about you. If you're listening to understand, then you're reacting at the correct time with a positive outcome, right? And the positive outcome might be a negative thing. Hey, you need to stop doing this, right?
Sure.
But you're creating a thoughtful thing rather than just having to own your point, right?
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, I got to tell you, this young guy though is just 100% of the time. I mean, he's one of the reasons why we were able to get so many things from remote access up so quickly. Didn't know our VDI system, stood it up, got it working. Didn't know Citrix, stood it up, got it working. Countless hours. I mean, this is the kind of for those young people that are looking to get into the industry. I mean, it's don't say no. Jump at every opportunity you get and to figure it out. And this young guy has just been a pleasure to be able to see grow and so quickly.
Dan, here's what I knew when you started saying you were giving him crap. I knew he was that guy because having seen you and known you, you're cordial to the people that you just have to tolerate while they're on the workspace. And your method of bringing people into the, hey, you're part of the team and you're growing, is to start verbally jabbing with them, right? And that's how you make people great, right? I mean, the other people, you're like, hey, I'm not spending any time on you, so I'll just you pat you on the head and you go over there and do the best you can.
Well, and I think there's something to that. I mean, in from my view, especially with guys, right? If I'm willing to make the personal, emotional investment to rib with you a little bit, then obviously I want to spend time with you.
Mm-hmm.
If I don't want to make that investment, then I'm not going to do it. And that doesn't mean I don't like you. It just means I don't really want to spend that much time with you.
Ipso facto, he doesn't really like you. So everyone knows.
It comes back to you have relationships, you have friendships, and you have situationships.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And those folks that you've got to put up with them, they're a situationship, right? And it's the thing I tell people all the time. If you do an experiment, you want to see who's in your life, stop being the first person to text them all the time and see how and see what that response is, right? And if they don't text you back, that tells you everything you need to know.
Right. Yeah, I mean, life can sort itself out if you're paying attention.
Yeah.
And at the same time, it's not really a loss. Not the way I look at it. I don't get upset about it. Like, there's people that don't talk to me if I don't talk to them first, and that's okay.
Right.
Okay. You're just in a group now that I keep mentally track of. It's not a big deal. And it doesn't make them bad people. It's just the nature of that relationship and how it's brokered.
Right. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and everything is kind of in a way like that. There are people that are givers, there are people that are takers. There are the energy vampires out there, so to speak. And once you take a look at any given situation, any given relationship, and you understand what it is, you know how to act accordingly. I can go months without talking to certain people, and it doesn't matter, either way. One of us tries to get up, hold of it. It's like, all right, here it is. Like, we don't, the constant communication isn't necessary for the relationship to continue.
Right.
Yeah, sure.
Others it's I haven't heard from you in a couple of days. Well, I got stuff to do. I don't necessarily have, if I'm gonna be the supreme emperor of this galaxy, I've gotta continue working.
Wait, assistant to the emperor. Wait, let's get that straight.
Oh no, it's definitely the supreme emperor. I'll allow the Carolinas to continue to be one unified state.
Do you feel that way about the Dakotas as well?
Do I?
I'm talking to Dan. Does Dan? Do you feel that way?
Yeah, pretty much.
Well,
Like if you have a north and a south, I mean, to me, it's just another form of segregation, and you might as well.
If you have directional states, you want them all to combine.
Yeah.
Virginia and West
Absolutely.
Virginia? Wait, here's a question. And I really, this is an honest to God question. I never thought about this before until right now. Why is it North, South Dakota, North, South Carolina, but it's Virginia and West Virginia? Does anybody know? I really don't know the answer to that.
I don't know. But I look at it like this. If we combine them all into one, then it makes it easier for us to make Canada a state. It makes it easier to bring Puerto Rico back in. And, we can just add another one and we'll still be right back at the, the 50 stars on the flag. We don't have to change anything.
That's brilliant. That's actually brilliant.
Oh, DC. We'll make DC a state. There you go. There it is. There's the three: Canada, Puerto Rico, DC. Now we're good.
Oh, I got an answer to our question. If anybody's interested,
The West Virginia conundrum.
yeah, because West Virginia, and I'm quoting the Washington Post. West Virginia is the only
reliable
state
source.
formed. Hey, man, I'm just telling you where I'm reading it. I could go down to Wikipedia too. West Virginia is the only state formed because of the Civil War. And so because the Civil War was North and South, they apparently determined West from the east of Virginia, if that makes sense. That's why it's West, not North.
Well, it's not north of it either.
Well, no, I mean,
I almost jumped in and engaged in this. I almost you almost got me.
That's interesting, though. I really didn't know that. I never thought about it before. Why is it West? There you go.
Interesting.
Hey,
And they
this is an
couldn't
educational
think of
show.
any other names.
Well,
I mean, all the other
wanted
names
it.
were
North and the South,
essentially,
nobody wanted it.
yeah. I mean, all the names essentially came from something in England at some point anyway. So they just basically, well, we don't want to name it something else. We can't come up with any other names. They weren't that original.
Yeah.
I mean, TK was there.
Yeah, I mean, how did you guys pick the name?
I knew it. I was just like, talk, tick, talk.
I mean,
Who wants to talk
Jason
about-
makes a great Scottie Pippen to this Michael Jordan.
Oh boy.
Yeah, one of us is the best, and who wants to talk about energy consumption?
We have been consuming a lot for very little output.
That's true. That's true. Just
Right
your
now.
wheels a little bit. Get warmed up. So I read this article. Fuck it, I'll just jump right into it. I read this article early this week, and it's not something I've thought about in a while, but it's something that I used to think about, especially because I spent a lot of time moving data centers. And so in designing the next iteration of a data center, one of the things we would immediately start thinking about is power draw and heating and cooling. And at least for us, as let's say gear got denser, so instead of like 6 used servers, we were collapsing everything down to 1 used servers, but there was 12 of them, right? So you're denser, you're putting out more heat, drawing more power. As processors have gotten more powerful, there's been somewhat more of a power draw, but of course the big introduction is through graphics processing units, GPUs. And one of the primary uses of a GPU is for AI computation. And so this article is talking about how there's this explosion in energy consumption. And then it made me think of At High Point, once a year in the fall, they have a entrepreneur pitch competition where kids will come up with an idea. It has to be a legitimate idea in the sense that it's something they want to set up as a business. And it's like a big Shark Tank kind of setup, okay? And they bring in like judges from industry and stuff. It's pretty cool. I participated in the last one. And this kid proposed an idea of essentially what was a sunken GPU farm, where you as a farmer could buy this setup, and then his company would come and sink it underneath the ground for heating and cooling. Idea was good. The execution was lacking. But it started me thinking back then about, are we headed down a road where we're not going to be able to power everything we want to power because of the limitations of right now in our energy grid? What do you guys think about that?
What makes you think that we have a limitation in our energy grid?
Well, I don't think we have a limitation necessarily in the amount of power we can produce, but we have bottlenecks in switching between, let's say, architectures. Let's say from coal to solar.
Okay.
In fact, it's kind of fortuitous because just 2 days ago, an article came out talking about, for the first time ever, the U.S. now is set to have a net production of renewable energy source beyond, let's say, coal.
So we should just move everything to nuclear and not have another worry.
I would agree with you. I don't know that I would frame it in the way that we don't have any more worries, but
I mean, we got all these people that are just leaving the Navy that were running big, huge nuclear powered ships. I mean, they'd be able to run those nuclear power plants with no problem, I think.
Well, I mean, how long has France had at least 3/4 of their power produced through nuclear? A long time.
I don't know.
And they still
not even the size. They're not even the size of Texas. So
My
point wasn't that they have a sufficient size.
You just have to put a disclaimer on him.
See, this is the mistake of getting wound up too early, too fast.
So there's a company, and when you brought this up as a topic, there's a company out there called Determined AI, and they help companies use deep learning, and they help companies use AI. They have stuff like they can provide software to manage companies' AI projects and things like that. They were saying they and I'm going to read it up there. Artificial intelligence routinely produces startling achievements, and they're looking at for driving vehicles. The test was, hey, how do you solve a Rubik's cube? But one of the things that they thought was that their power consumption has increased 300,000-fold in about a 6-year period. And at some point, they thought that their best guess for what they've used is 2.8 gigawatts, which is roughly the output of a nuclear power facility for an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And what's the net? Is that net negative or net positive? And even with the younger person, they think, what a great idea. Right. Yeah. Execution should suck when you're 19 years old. Right.
Yeah.
Visionary, right. Go bury it in the ground. Why? Get below the thermal thing and just deplete the energy.
Mm-hmm.
I think the bigger problem whenever we start talking about this in the US is everybody's staked out a position that's binary. Right. And when facts show up, people get amnesia, right? That we're as a country, we're on a net arc down towards less fossil fuel use faster than anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We've dedicated not to build any new coal plants in this country, and the coal industry survives today in the U.S. based on what we export, largely to China. Right? But if you look, and I think we've talked about this before, right? When you say we're going to go green or we're going to do this, nobody says that's a bad idea. Right? I think everybody says, how are we getting there? And just like everything else, and not destroy the economy. Well, we're seeing what it looks like when we start destroying the economy.
But we're much more green now. I think like LA County has like the best air quality in the country.
Right, because now the ocean breeze can move it all out because it's just the density of that isn't so much. right? That, and I think one of the things, when you start talking about renewable energy is the storage. And if you guys noticed the other day, Tesla and their whole battery piece now, they've cracked the code and be able to go cobalt free.
Right. Yeah.
Right? And that's
that article came out this week too.
Right. That's the next big step, right? In doing that. And you look at that battery piece and that goes, how are they going to do things on Mars, right? I mean, you look at that visionary thing. It's like, hey, we're going to have to get something out there. Right. And if we can collect enough solar energy, for example, and get, I mean, and I use this example there's a house in Virginia Beach. It's 7,000 square feet. It's a full-on earthcraft, foam-filled concrete. Everything is taped up, done. There's minimal losses. I'm personal friends with the builder, so I kind of know the story behind the house. In order to get a reading of the differential loss, they had to untape something and get the system. It was so tight. But that house was built in 2008. They've got PVs on the roof, and then they've got the storage. And they still, the old architecture was, hey, if there's any excess, we're not going to store it. We're going to give it back to the power company, and then we'll get a rebate. At a 7,000 square foot house, he still gets a rebate of a couple $100 every month, right? Mm-hmm. Think about what happens today if you put 2020 PVs on that roof and the new thought of storage, right? But when you say this, it's not one house at a time, right? I think if I was, when Dan allows me to participate at some level at his supreme ruleness, one of the things I would say is everything we do has to be thought of in systems, right? Yes. And
there'll always be a place for you, TK.
I know. Thank you. But if you look at it, like, to me, a lot of times when, whether it's a all electric car or anything, and I think the new term for it is virtue signaling. I'm better than you because I'm doing this. And if you actually go, okay, when you plug that car in at night, you just don't pump gas in your car. You don't see where it goes. Where's the net energy transfer happening? Not by you, so you don't care. Right. So if you say, hey, how are we going to do this at scale? It's got to start with in the residential area. It's got to start with developers, right? Mm-hmm. When you take a whole neighborhood, don't try to gobble up every square foot and put a house on it. Put a solar farm there and have the power grid go from, the conventional power grid go to the solar farm, and then whatever it needs after, push all the solar energy. But all those houses need to be built to a standard that doesn't waste that energy. That's reality now, because even 10, 12 years ago, it was 30% more to build. Down here, it's an Earthcraft certified house, right? That is creeping to where the nexus of conventional versus, and people want that, right? Not necessarily because it's saving the planet, because it costs them less money over time.
Some of the new condo developments in the neighborhood I lived in California had that, where as a development community, as they were building, they would put in panel farms off to the side, and then that fed into a central, essentially, repository for all the units.
Yeah, I think that at scale is the way you do it, right? Mm-hmm. And I think, Dan, we've got this thing in our noggins now that we have to do solar, wind, something that makes people feel good, right? When we're in our fields. We're in our fields hard right now with COVID, right? There's no one on earth can tell me if you're a healthy young person, that you're not in an immunocompromised group, that you should wear a mask when you're out and about, right? It's no rational thought. Like the way throughout the curve of history, we've beat these things is by getting immunity. Right. And this concept of, it's straight up virtue signaling. I'm better than you because I wear a mask. Right.
Yeah.
Be better than me because
I just think this is the funny thing. So, I work in the financial services industry. We tend to frown upon people wearing masks inside of our establishments.
Yeah. It's the John Dillinger thing. Why do you rob banks? Well, that's where the money is.
Yeah. Right. There's something to that.
But
I heard an interesting stat.
look at what we're doing with COVID right now, and people are they want to berate people, you want to snitch on your neighbor. The problem is now we've lost the target, right? We were told it was this, then it was that, then it's this, then it's it goes from we're all in this together to stitch on your neighbor to you're not supposed to go to the beach. And somebody tell me why walking around breathing fresh air and getting vitamin D is a bad thing for you. I don't it, just doesn't compute with me. But when we as a nation talk about energy, we do the same thing. If I advocate for solar or wind, I'm a good person because nobody talks about how many birds wind farms kill.
A lot.
A tremendous amount. And one of the little ugly things that I learned it from somebody that's in politics, but is in a state that's heavily invested in wind. They have a whole team that does nothing but keep the birds cleaned up in case somebody accidentally takes a photo that's supposed to be pristine, right? So there's a cost to everything. But if you say we've committed to not build any more coal-fired power plants in the U.S., that's not good enough, right? There's a portion of the left that some people call them eco-terrorists, but there's a portion that it has to be my way or nothing. Life doesn't work like that, right? And so, what steps are we taking? India said it best. Right now, if you don't include China or India in any of these calculations to, in effect, air quotes, save the planet, it doesn't matter, right? We can do whatever we want here. We can break ourselves financially. We can do it sensibly. We can be radical in a whole bunch of ways. But if it's not going to be a global effort and everybody's not going to get in on the same type of mindset, then we need to do what we do to go green, but also do it in a fiscally responsible manner to continue, because we're completely non-dependent on foreign energy if we don't want to be, right? We don't have to pay the world's despots to hate us. Right. And that's literally where that comes at, right? But India, they, when people get on their high and mighty and tell China doesn't care. China's like, whatever, we're going to do what we want, right? India, their leader had a rational response. It's not the current one, it's the one before him. And he was basically chastising.
The current one not rational?
What? No, this one is, but it wasn't. It was him, right? It just wasn't the current leader, right? Who was the first freely elected leader. It was this statement, and it was very prescient, and it's the right argument. When American eco people are getting on India in particular, they're like, hold on a second. At the turn of the 20th century, you guys belched more crap into the air and put it more so you could make yourself the industrial powerhouse that you are and become the America you are today. Why don't we get an opportunity? Right. Telling people at any time, whether it's the individual or the nation state, if you tell somebody they're effed up and then ask them for something, how does that often work? Not so much. No. That's where we're at today. And then you get that little moron Greta Thunberg on there, and gonna think. I mean, it's like this is I don't need a 13-year-old telling me about the environment, right? Or chastising me, right? It's just it's disingenuous on so many levels, right? Let's talk about this rationally. And if your rational can't be that we've got to stay on the glide slope we are, and if we can steepen it without tearing the country financially apart. Because we're not going to be able to do a lot after this whole thing. They're going to put another $3 trillion out there and keep printing money, right? And at some point, that circus that wheel has got to stop, right? So how are we doing that? Getting us off that grind, and I'll be the first one. Most of my reaction when people start, being high and mighty about the energy, the type of energy their car uses, I'm like, well, go to the power plant. What's your power bill at your house gone up? Where's you're not using gas anymore, but what's your power bill?
Isn't it kind of the paper versus plastic argument? You're either paying at the beginning or you're paying at the end. Right. Well, because paper, to make anything paper is extremely dirty for the environment.
This is one of my we've made paper bags at the grocery store so thin that you can't put anything but a loaf of bread in them. So what do? They double the bags up. It's not. Yeah. Then the stores are starting to get nasty. Well, why didn't you bring your bags? Like, no, you want to charge me $10 to get enough bags? Like, provide them for me, right?
Okay. Yes, exactly. So here's a question, and I'm really curious on your insight on this. One of the things I've sometimes thought about, particularly with Iran, Because Iran kind of had the same argument with nuclear, right? Like, you guys have nuclear energy, why can't we develop it? I'm not saying that's the whole argument,
Right.
okay, but there is an element of that to it. So why do we as humans, not Americans or the West, but humans have this tendency to say you can't have it, even though we have it, instead of saying, hey, wait a minute, we're all part of a global system at this point. That's not going away. And so why don't we work together to find a way to invent something technologically so that what you do end up with isn't able to be used in a bad way? Like, maybe there's some version we could come up with if we got our heads together, instead of just saying, no, you can't have it.
Well,
Honest brokers.
nuclear power, not giving Iran the capability to power their country with nuclear, has nothing more to do than the West in general, not just the U.S., but the West in general, has no trust and confidence that they won't divert that to
Right.
weaponization, right? And their argument is going to be like, well, you have nuclear weapons, and and you're the only country that's ever used them. Why don't we get them? Right. And there's a difference when you start talking at the dawn of anything, right? Where somebody's got to be the first to do it. And then you're like, ooh, might not want to do that again.
Sure.
But think about the amount of money spent on nuclear weapons in the Cold War, right? Just as a deterrent. And how over that 50-year period.
Well, did we really spend that much money, or did Russia just do it and bankrupt them?
No, there's two different things. We all spent, everybody, but the concept that some lieutenant in of the Russian or thing could basically start the Holocaust. That's, think about what you're asking, right? Yeah. And now today, there was the bad thing about the Cold War was especially if you say we're on the good side, if that's your argument, right? I'm not advocating one way. I'm saying if you're on the good side, right, that. When the Eastern Bloc broke up, it gave a lot of countries that should have been free for 50 years the ability to run away from a totalitarian regime. Mm-hmm. Right? Here's the bad thing: the U.S. kept all their satellites in check, and they kept all their satellites in check. Now, you could say that any country that had nuclear weapons under either umbrella were the nuclear weapons of that country. Not, just a function of where they're deployed and who's pushing the go button.
Right.
But I don't know. I personally don't know what Russia did, but I know in the U.S., for the most part, in order to, especially with the more advanced weaponry, there were a lot of preconditions put on there, even to England and other countries that are part of what we call the Five Eyes community. There was a lot of stipulations put on how they could do it, and how they, when you sell them the technology, what the backstops are. Let's just say it that way, right? Mm-hmm. But that now we're going to take and go that. Now we're going to say, what's the 21st century energy plan globally? Right. Well, we can't agree on. Nobody can agree on what's actually safe, and more importantly, what the financial structure of that looks like to keep us driving. We've cleaned up our country at a faster pace than every other big industrialized nation. Because it's good for us, not because we're trying to show off the world, right? That's the free market thing. Is like there's a financial incentive to do what we're doing. Otherwise, it would not have gotten done.
Sure. Well, and see, this makes me think like the nuclear Cold War analogy, I think, holds for what we're experiencing right now at the cusp of the AI explosion. I don't want to talk about whether AI is AI, but there is an increased use in computational power. And as a consequence of that, it takes more real power to power the gear. And so, when Cameroon squares their shit away and decide they want to join the first world country, they're going to need technology. And I don't know that as a global citizen, I want to be part of a society that says, no, you have to do it the hard way or you can't have it at all. I'd rather learn from our mistakes and being first and say, look, this is how you do it in a clean package. Bam, turnkey.
I agree.
But to do that, you got to figure some of this stuff out.
Yeah, but do you believe that because GPUs overall are more relatively new than the CPUs, we've spent a lot of time in the CPU aspect of making their energy consumption efficient? We haven't spent that same amount of time in the GPUs to make their power consumption efficient, because they're more specialized tasks, because we want parallel processing and all this kind of jazz, where the CPU is more of the jack of all trades. It's got to be able to do a lot of different things and be able to hand off. Do you think maybe we start shifting that aspect to the GPU, or do we just think, hey, they're just going to be the energy hogs because we need that amount of computational power?
I mean, I think you could get some more efficiency out of it, but simply because of the type of calculation it does and the rate it does it at, to put it informally, they just draw more power, period.
Yeah,
it's like my 2,000 square foot house versus an 8,000 square foot house. They're both houses, sure, but it just takes more to run one.
Yeah, so they might get to the point to where they become a little bit more energy efficient, but then we're just going to use them in order to handle more calculations.
Yeah.
So your still net is more energy. Well,
right, and I think the only chance you have of truly breaking this cycle is shifting the actual substrate. So getting away from electrons and getting to photons. Well, Neuralink, yeah, sure. Yeah. And then we can all live in like little vats and just power everything through our brain power, literally. Yeah. No, but you get away from electron-based buses to photon through graphene. That's a chance to break that, because now, by definition, you don't need power. You just need light. Or at least not as much power. But, dude, that ain't coming anytime soon.
Yeah, that's not next week for sure.
No, our immediate problem with our immediate mobile problem, but specifically when you break it out into, like you were saying, getting to Mars, the big limitation in mobile computational power is battery. Mm-hmm. You can make hella powerful mobile devices, but the batteries get drained. I mean, you can watch it just...
But that goes back to what we were talking about before we got on the show, is if it comes into app design, right?
Yep.
You're going to expend the power somewhere, right? Energy, it has to be expended to get a result. So do I build everything so that the app is largely a presentation and input layer, and then let the magic happen in the back and wear somebody else's batteries out, for example? Or do I basically tear up the phone? Right? I think we're getting a lot more crafty about that. And certainly, within iOS, they're starting to make apps, right? When you update, if you haven't gotten to a certain level of not having Node.js, or basically ways to backdoor communicate to that app, and they're doing it because they want the integrity of the ecosystem to function correctly, and they believe that's the way to do it. But if you're getting that out, now everybody's going more to being that presentation layer, and I think that allows you to get an on-screen result, right? Because that's really what you're asking for. I'm giving input, get an on-screen result with a lot less energy consumption locally. You're still going to pay it somewhere. Think about these numbers. So these guys at OpenAI, they through trial and error, they figured out how to manipulate a piece of the Rubik's Cube using a robotic hand. It was a remarkable research feat, but required more than 1,000 desktop computers and a dozen machines running specialized graphics chips, crunching intensive calculations for several months. They figured the effort may have consumed 2.8 gigawatts of electricity. Just to figure out how a robotic arm manipulates the Rubik's Cube. It's a step.
So that's more. I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, that's more than the entire energy consumption for the country of Spain.
It very well might be. It's enough to, and they said that's enough to run a nuclear power plant. That's the output of a nuclear power plant for about an hour.
Right? Or to send a DeLorean back in time going 88 miles an hour.
Right, but think about that. Now, where do we want this technology?
Or they have a flux capacitor.
Well, what level? We get back to mobile devices. Mm-hmm. What level of robotics are we going to be at to build a mobile device? What level of robotics are we currently at, and where are we driving when we make automobiles? I don't care whether you're making a Tesla or whether you're making a Ford truck.
Right.
There's certain robots that are inclined to be used there.
Sure.
When your Tesla battery is depleted, how long does it take for it to be fully charged?
I don't know. I can go ask my lawyer. He's the Tesla battery guy.
If you go to a supercharger station, I think you can measure it in minutes.
Really?
Yeah. The supercharger stations, because of the technology. That's my understanding. I don't have a Tesla, but I thought it was in the order of like tens of minutes.
It's a good thing we have this new thing called Google. I can just Google and find out.
Internet. I mean, I think as a concept, and that's that curve of early adopters, and we're now getting into where more and more folks are buying. It's not odd to see all electric vehicles now and everything like that. And that's great if your life revolves around a certain geographic area. big city, Hampton Roads. But like when I was driving back and forth to DC all the time, once I got there, I parked in a garage with no charging station. I couldn't make it back. At the time, it was about 320 miles. Well, hey, if I got stuck in traffic or anything, I'd probably have to stop somewhere along the way.
Right.
This has to be, again, it's like we say about all of these secure voice and messaging app. It needs to function like iMessage for us to get global adoption because people don't want to change their habits. Well, when you start talking about how an automobile functions, I want to be able to drive across the country, right? And do it without, park at a hotel at night, recharge my car, get up and drive the whole day. Now I don't have to stop in the middle of the day for gas. Right?
Yeah, you can't make it less convenient. Nobody's going to do it.
Right. I mean, like I said, there's a certain segment, I don't care what it is. People, it's the I'm better than you crowd. And I'm doing this. I'm like, well, where's your power really coming from, right? But I think I would say that, and I don't know this for sure, and I'm sure the internet machine over there knows it, that it's, energy consumption in that car and how it's stored is much more effective than it was when let's say Mike bought his in 2010, 2011, whatever it is.
Yeah. Right.
It has to be.
90 minutes at a supercharging station. If it was fully depleted.
Essentially 0 to full, right?
Yep. Yeah. Not too bad.
So, do I want to add 90 minutes if I'm traveling, if I'm trying to go from Virginia Beach to Boston, right? Do I want to stop every 300 miles and spend 90 minutes?
Right.
Right. I think that's the limiting factor on mass deployment. And you can't legislate this kind of stuff into action.
No.
People, we're seeing it now. I mean, with the COVID thing, like Virginia Beach is effectively closed because the governor said it unconstitutionally said we can't go on the beach. The place was packed yesterday. Right. And people are just like, you're gonna arrest me.
Yeah.
And it's even got, there's a private, you can't do this with franchises, but there's a guy that owns a private gym in Virginia Beach. And he's basically never shut down. When the police showed up, they're like, show me a warrant where I'm violating the law. What you're asking me to do is not constitutionally allowed. And so go get a warrant and I'll shut down. They never came back. Right. This for me is
no judge. I mean, so I think it was the state of Washington or maybe it was Wisconsin. I can't remember which. The state Supreme Court has already ruled that the is unconstitutional. So other states are going to follow.
Well, I can't speak for the whole nation, but in the Commonwealth of Virginia, it's like this. The governor constitutionally has the authority to quarantine sick people, keep sick people away from everybody else, right? The problem now with this, in my estimation, is we're in our feelings hard, right? You get on social media and, what about my 80-year-old parents? Well, keep them at home. Go grocery shopping for them. Right? That's what we do everywhere else. If in the wintertime, how many elderly get the flu shot? They kind of stay away from everybody. When you come over as family, you're worried about your parents, grandparents getting sick, right? How do we outsource this to the nation? And then, and this is the new one. If you don't like a mask, you're probably not going to like a ventilator. I saw that meme. Well, we've already figured out that ventilators are contraindicated for this, right? But common sense and what we're doing have never shook hands.
Right. Yeah. Well said. Well said.
I read an interesting statistic that the average age of death from someone from COVID-19 is older than the overall average age of death in the United States.
Yes. Right. And it's, hospitals now, I mean, they're laying off employees because they freaked everybody out. Right. I mean, the truth is, if you're 24 and under, you're like a 1 in a million chance, to even get it and be noticed, that you have it. And even much more remote that you're going to go to the hospital or even die. Right. And it's get out there and, like I said, don't mouth kiss your cashier at Wegmans or Walmart, but get out there and live your life.
Not at Walmart.
I mean, fear is right now, it's caused us not to think rationally.
Yeah, right.
I'm interested when this stuff gets done is that who is going to go back and then plug in the real data so you can see how many sigmas, it was off from the regression line.
Well, that's what we're starting to do now, right? And because Michael, we're starting to do that now. The other thing that's happening is states are going back and readjusting their numbers, right? Colorado and they're in the middle of this. Colorado just took 270 some odd people off the COVID death list and gave them a thing. But when you start attaching funding from the federal government to that's it's hard for a politician to ignore free money.
Yeah, sure.
Well,
sure.
It's the train that we're on, right? But this, I think Italy, there's a big joke. It's like they have a meme out there. It's a guy jumping out of a plane without a parachute, and they're like COVID death, right? Well, Italy had the normal thousands of flu deaths in 2019. They have 56 this year. Right? It's statistically impossible to change that much, especially in what was considered to be a heavy flu thing. Right? In the absence of common sense, right? Well, I'm going to get my new T-shirt #FactsOverFeels, right? Because this people trying to shame people about not wearing masks. But I saw it perfectly. I was at the grocery store the other day, and a bunch of young people, none of them had masks on, and there were a few elderly people in there with masks. They were protecting themselves, right? You can't outsource your own protection personally. You can't it's not the government's job to take care of you, right? It's the government's job to protect the landmass in the country and do that stuff. But when it comes to the health, I don't believe in large measure that this is we're gonna I'm not even talking about financially. The legacy of this is going to just be ugly personal behavior amongst citizens for a while.
What I got to tell you is that wearing a mask right now, to me, is a huge pain in the ass, because I can't go and basically breathe because my glasses are constantly fogged up wearing any of these masks.
Right. You need a snorkel.
Yeah,
I'm like
a straw.
And I found that and I've only found non-authoritative sources to say this, but like in Japanese culture, they wear masks when they're sick because they find it dishonorable to get someone else sick because they are.
But that's what I'm saying. If you're sick or you're in a group, an immunocompromised group that could become sick, that it's like, hey, these are the people that are dying. I don't want to be one of them. Put a mask on.
Right.
I
gotta go and wear contacts again just so I can wear this stupid mask.
Right. Hey, and by the way, if you're wearing a mask in your car, driving around with the windows rolled up, invest heavily in condoms because we do not want you to pollute the planet. I swear to God.
See, but this is what happens. Let me tell you a quick little story about masks, okay? So I don't know if I've told you guys this before, but when I was in undergrad, on breaks and summers for the first couple of years, I worked on a rose farm cutting roses, okay? And these are massive greenhouses. It's not fun. It was not fun, okay? But it exposed me to a very colorful cast of characters. And so all the full-time people had to take turns spraying pesticides. Okay, a couple times a week, you had to go through the greenhouses, and it was these big long hoses that ran through pipes back from a central tank, and you had to walk around. Okay. Not only is it chemically dangerous to inhale those fumes and get it on your skin, okay, but they're also flammable. So the rule was nobody could ever, under any circumstances, smoke inside of a greenhouse, because just about everybody smoked at that time. You could only smoke outside or on your breaks. Now, of course, put two together, and some of these dudes figured out that when you're spraying the chemicals, unless you're the one spraying them, nobody else was allowed in that greenhouse. So these dudes took it as like a 2-hour smoke break. And what they did is they took their gas mask and they drilled a hole in it so they could stick their cigarette in. And they would walk around spraying chemicals with a cigarette stuck in between the two filters on the rebreather. That's what happens.
Hey, if we're gonna start legislating where people can go, what they can do, what they can consume, and how we force them to act when they're in public, can we just ban all tobacco products? Because we've got a little bit more than empirical evidence that the medical costs alone are appalling.
I like my Cuban cigars.
I hear you, Dan. Come on in for the big window.
Yeah, right. I mean,
It's only been since 1954, right? That it's been out there that, they're not like doctors haven't been, look at my brand of cigarette.
Again, you could just go back to saying like, alcohol causes more deaths. I mean,
No, I get it.
Right?
My point is like, at what point, why are we allowed to kill ourselves that way, but not this way?
yeah, right. Either you're going to allow all of it or none of it.
Right. And this is, we have think about like, what are the rules? The rules about alcohol consumption and smoking, while they're tighter than they used to be, it's pretty free ranging. If you're 18 in most states, 21 in some, you're free to move about the country. Just don't get behind a wheel when you're drunk and kill somebody else. Don't become a hazard. Don't let your habit impede anybody else. Smoking was always harder because of secondhand smoke and everything, and the smoking crowd gets uppity about it. And I remember I was on a ship during a deployment early 90s when the Navy said no more smoking inside ships, and we were on a relatively small amphibious ship, and that ship saved $1 million just in ventilation replacement in 1 year. But the smoke guard, they went off. You can't tell me I can't. Guess what? You're in the Navy, so they can tell you whatever. You're going to do whatever they tell you. That's just how this works.
Right.
But if you get to the heart, because I used to ask the older guys, like not still, like go on a ship and ask the old dudes why every sailor smoked. Because for the most part, even though it wasn't mandated, they were courteous by themselves, and they would just go outside the skin of the ship to smoke, right? Just because they didn't want to mess up the thing. Engineers were a little bit because it was a lot to get out of there, and you've got all sorts of fumes anyway. So what's a little bit of smoke? But if you're in an electronics shop or something like that, they would leave the shop and they would go out, stand outside. Well, what would happen is the non-smokers didn't get that 10 minutes every hour to go out and smoke a cigarette, so they were doing that work. And so if you started smoking, then it gave you a reason to go out and be social and do everything else. And so then now, rather than saying, hey, everybody, let's take 10 minutes and go do what you want, if you didn't smoke, you were frowned upon if you went out and just hung out.
Yeah.
The overall interesting thing when we start talking about the stuff with the quarantine and things of this nature is, I'm I kind of go back to myself and looking at it as, I kind of went up, down, up, down, up, down based on the data I was getting. But I still believed when all of this started, a short time period of the quarantine was warranted. But 3 months, that's a long time. And
well, it's
this is going to happen again. It's going to happen again.
It's 3 months with no one telling you what the end looks like and everybody moving the target. Right. I mean, the governor of Virginia is a medical doctor, and yet he stands up there like he's the last guy in line that hasn't, like, he just got woken up and he's like, what am I doing? Oh, Monty, what am I supposed to talk about? We're not opening the state up today. I'm going to go home. Right. And that's going on around the country. And we have disingenuous arguments. Right.
Yeah.
Well, let's take a look at Florida and Georgia. They're obviously opening up thing, and they're, from what I've read, they're managing their risk. And let's look at another state that's not even considering opening up, right? And get some of the politics out of it and go, where can we go with this and why? Right. That's what we're not doing. Right. And there's enough data out there to help solve this.
There is, and I think this is the part where, again, this is going to happen again. I mean, there's been another variant of the coronavirus, whether it be SARS, Ebola, whatever, about every 2 to 2.5 years. This is just the first time it's really hit big in the U.S. So what's going to happen in another 2.5 years when it's SARS version 3?
People aren't going to buy it.
Do this again?
They're going to be like, nope, we're not falling.
We're not going to be able to afford it. We won't be able to afford it.
Right. We're not falling for the banana in the tailpipe again. We trusted you last time. You effed us over, and we're not going to derail the economy. If you're sick, don't come out. If that kind of thing. Right. And it's just, this whole thing is just baffling to me. It's turned into a political exercise now.
Yeah.
And then we start getting into the privacy aspects. Like there's an interesting article, and I'll have to see if I can find it, that talks about those with contact tracing. that if your employers are mandating it, I mean, people are like, nope, not going to happen. But people are more willing to trust the government than they are their employer.
I got a perfect example for you. So we talked about this 2 shows ago about contact tracing and Google and everybody get involved. Check this out. So I had a meeting on Monday, all the faculty and all this stuff. And when we come back, and it's a phased approach, we can come back, but I could start going back to my office on campus on Monday. I have to download an app that our health provider owns, that I have to fill out some information before I go to campus and hit enter, and it gives me a red light or a green light. Okay. And they're going to check it at the gate and take my temperature. And if it's green and my temperature is within an okay range, they're going to let me in. If not, they didn't say what they were going to do. For all I know, they're going to haul me off. Here's the catch. Because, of course, I said, well, wait a minute. You as a company are telling me that I have to install your software on my personal device. No. Nope. Ain't happening, bro. If you want me to use this app, you give me a device with the app on it. Second of all, who's owning the data? Nobody knows. Well, we know the answer to this. So wait, here's the catch, though. The people that are from the health company, not the university, that are going to be at the gate checking this shit, they're only there for 2 hours, from like 7:45 to 9:45. So what, is that the only time the sick people show up?
So
like you
so
come
you're,
at 7:40.
7:30.
Yeah, right.
I'll tell you this, though. I had a discussion with John Callis recently. We were on a call, and I was like, because he's part of the ACLU tech crowd now. And so that was my question, like, hey, have you guys, what have you been told by Apple and Google? The thing with Apple and Google, I can't speak for all these other little health companies. The thing with Apple and Google that was hopeful for me is every step along the way is opt-in.
Yeah.
Right. And there's clear guidelines of where that data is. And you can
because I also had a conversation with him about it.
Yeah, it's like, who are you going to call, right? Because who's probably seen this, because those 2 companies want buy-in from a third party, right? And it's I just don't. I think that's virtue signaling. You're basically lining people up, right? And we've seen how that worked in the past. It didn't turn out so well.
No. Well, no, and to your point, Dan.
Nobody names their kid Adolf anymore for a reason.
No. To your point, Dan, no. So it runs from 7:45 to 9:45. I'm showing up one day at 7:44 and the next day at 9:46. That's not what the letter said. The letter said 7:45 to 9:45, not 7:44.
Because this is the thing where I get to. I mean, it's a huge invasion of your personal privacy to have something that's going to be potentially be tracking you at all times. And I'd be going, like when we started talking about it at my employer, and we've so far opted to not. It's, again, who owns the data? But I'm like, hey, this has got PII data in there if it's on my phone. What are the other permissions this app has?
Well, if it's asking you for your temperature or asking for any other questions about how you feel, it now has PHI as well.
Yeah. Right. And see, the big thing, and you guys know me, this is me being me. I'm willing to entertain a bit of bullshit up to a point. But when I get to that point, now I'm not going to participate in your theater anymore. I'm not an actor, and I don't get paid to act. I didn't stay at a Holiday Inn.
Like, okay. All 3 of us that way. Well, okay, we'll walk down the road with you a little bit. Nope, next exit, I'm out of here.
Yep.
Oh, because what I'll do at that point is whenever I'll set the permit. This is why I love Android, because I can do so much at this point with it, right? I'll set this up to be only used while the app is in use, and then I'll set up Tor, and I'll be in France every single time I have to use this app. So when it utilizes the geolocation, I am in a completely different country.
Well, see, but this is why I love my colleagues in my department. Like, you think if I'm a little counterculture or anti-authoritarian, they're all far worse than I am. And maybe it's just because they're older. I don't know. But they're all like, well, no, we're just going to take a screenshot one time and then share the screenshot and show the people the screenshot. Like,
I love it. 10 minutes after anything comes out, somebody's already figured a way around it.
Yeah.
Because this is the thing. If you mandate it, people are not going to, they're not going to be honest about it. You have to,
No.
if you want them to be honest, you have to incentivize and make it optional. Then people are more willing. And then, do the right thing. If you're an employer, don't track the geolocation data. You don't have to. Find apps that don't do that. Where it essentially it anonymizes in the grand scheme of things as the data of the individual. But if you're close to someone or not, because here's the thing, I'm not doing it. Not happening.
Here's the thing: you put a business back to work, right? And as pick whatever business it is, and you've got all your employees working, right? You encourage them. If you're sick, please stay at home. We're going to pay you, right? Because I'm not making any revenue right now, so I can't pay anybody. If 5% of the people call up in one day, I can absorb that while I'm still generating revenue. Okay, my margins might not be as high, my profit, all of those things, but at least I'm in business, right? Because at some point there's got to be tax revenue to pay for all the crap that they're doing right now, right? And all of the other things, right? And it just, to me, you're right. It's like, okay, you guys are swinging the ball in the dirt. If we don't test everybody at the exact same day, the test is irrelevant, because I might not have it today, but I might have it tomorrow. And you give yourself a sense of false security. Because I want to know. I want to see the number of cases, or the number of positive results spike, either through viral or antibodies. But the number that nobody really works is, what is the corresponding line doing of hospitalizations and death? Right?
That's right.
The R naught, or how everything is down at a 1% growth rate in most places. And where it's not, you guys need to hunker down. But you can't lock everybody up. Yesterday was the first day here. Like I said, I called my barbershop later because I had something to do in the morning. I couldn't be there first in line. So no, it's a zoo.
Right.
So TK, in 2015, was your clearance being held by OPM, or was it still based on your military?
No, it was still no, it was actually being held by a company.
Right. So OPM then did wind up doing the up. So you were a part of the 2015 breach, most likely.
Yeah. No, I am. I got LifeLock, kind of thing, right?
Right. So that's the thing where I go, look, you know what? My identity has already been compromised enough,
right,
from this country. I'm not going to add in another one. So, sorry, I get
it right, and and have a catastrophic effect, right? I mean, it's a law of averages at that point.
Well, and look, and I think what we're really saying, all bullshitting aside, is I'm willing to make some sacrifices if it is for a true greater good. But I'm not going to sacrifice to the same level for your theater. That's bullshit.
And that's all we are right now. It's
right, because the school
it's security theater.
Right, at the same time. Yeah, at the same time, the school said we're not going to do this to visitors. So what? Only full-time employees get sick, and we're only doing it for 2 hours. Well, come on, no. Now I'm not doing it.
Well, and what does the temperature tell you? It tells you you're already sick. So
what if I just?
That's not. So if I show up to work hungover, I might be elevated.
What if I just ran?
If I just ran, if I took niacin, right, where I'm having a flushing effect, the only way that really works is to get the internal temperature, and there's only one way I'm going to let that guard do it. He's not going to like it. Yeah. Right? Want you're going to have to earn it, right? But this is that concept, right? And I'm not going to say where, but I know a business that their employees sit outside and they'll put cold rags on their head, and make sure that they're going to pass. They're not doing it because they're sick or they think they're sick. They just don't want to not be able to work.
Right.
And this where if we're going to, the virtue signaling mask wearing crowd, what you're saying is that you don't believe that people can be people of their words.
Yeah.
Right. And that you know better than everybody else. And we've got to save you from yourselves. That's the problem, right? That's the angst with America in general right now is why are you telling me how to behave? Like what level of research have you done, that kind of thing.
And this is where you could tell a good company versus a bad company. All right. So you incentivize good behavior. such as, you know what, I'm not feeling too well, and it could be the companies that say there's unlimited sick time for these symptoms. You've got X period of time to go get tested. Basically let your doctor know, and do this. And if it comes back, it's it's all covered. And if you don't have it, then you come back to work. But that stuff was still geared towards a COVID pool. The companies that are going, hey, sorry, you've got a week of sick time. I don't really care. You're never going to get people to do the right thing. They're going to do stuff like put the cold compresses on, everything they can to show up to work, rather than just go, we want you to be healthy and do the right thing. The companies are going to, I think companies are going to start even more so with their health and in terms of their healthcare packages. Like ours already starts that they give us back something like $25 a month towards a gym membership. I think you're going to start seeing those things increase. And actually, it's not even 20. It could be yoga, it could be martial arts, it's whatever. It's some activity.
Physical wellness.
Yeah, anything from wellness. But they're going to start doing more and more of that because they need people to be able to be at work. And if you have a good immune system, which means you're eating right, you're exercising, you're going to be healthier. I think more and more companies.
You're going to be employee of the month. So here's a funny story. I was reading, they put out a poll. It was a pretty, it was tens of thousands of participants in this poll, and it was nationwide. And this was this past week, which functions of life you think should not be open? Well, number 2 was fitness facilities or gyms. And it was 78% of the respondents said that they should stay closed. So because I couldn't leave that number alone, I had to go see what that corresponded to. And if you take people that are 20 BMI and above, which is considered to be overweight, it's 78%.
Yeah.
Right. And
they don't want that.
It's the people that want a pill that don't want to go out and they want the easy button. All right. Well, here's the easy button. Get out, get fresh air, do a couple jumping jacks, go pump yourself somewhere at a gym for a while and do something, right? Go run. I mean, make yourself a healthy human being, right?
Right.
Dude, I've actually been loving being in so to speak, this, quasi quarantine mode, because I bought, back in like February, those bands you throw over the door, and I'm working out like twice a day. I mean, it's just like, I'm like, this is great. I'm coming back. I'm like the only person out there that's going to come back being, in better shape where everyone else is, eating out of boredom. I'm like, this is great.
It's just like again, it's like, when I want to go out to a restaurant, give me somebody that's hefty. They probably know where to go. Right. But when you're trying to solve a health problem, it's the old adage, and for all of you out in listener land, if you're obese and you go out and get your hair done and your nails done, right, what are you doing? All right. There's plenty of resources out there. And like you say, most healthcare providers put a premium on wellness. Mm-hmm. And if they don't, ask for it. And I think, Dan, you're exactly right, is go out there, but live a lifestyle that's going to allow you to live. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. It's one of the things about immunity when traveling overseas. Like, I don't know, for all you folks out there, Afghanistan and Iraq have their own brand of yuckiness, right? And the guys that never got sick, guys that did Copenhagen or DIP, because why? They were putting their filthy hands in their mouth all the time, everywhere, but long before they got there, and they had built up an immunity to most everything. Why? Because they had their filthy hands in their face all day long, right? And it was the guys that didn't, that showed thing. We used to laugh at everybody, and it's like, look, we don't have to, there's no big research project that needs to get done. You're basically treating your body like ass, and it's developed in, an immunity to certain things. Right. And it's where we're at today. I mean, the gym that I go to, before it closed, everybody that was there, it was like, if you go at the same time of the day, for the most part, you see the same people every day, and you develop those situationships where you spot each other and all that stuff. Right. Yeah. And it was a fun group of people, right? It's a big facility. They had 4 people dedicated, just employees, just to wiping stuff down. Everybody else, when they got off a piece of equipment, would pull the wipes, wipe everything down, wipe their hands down, even wipe the dumbbells down, Why? Because we didn't want the facility to close. We had a shared interest in success. They had people employed overnight going in and getting everything. So every day you showed up with a perfectly clean facility.
Right.
And they're like, no, you can't be open. Well, wait a second. You're not, again, it's all or nothing. It's not, nobody was sick there. Nobody thinking, and everybody, and they took pride in it. I mean, that's the one thing I love this gym. I hope that they can survive as a corporation, not being open for 3 months, but they did a fantastic job. And all they did was get kicked in the junk for it, because we have to be uniform in torching people's ability to move about.
That's great. Let's close the gym, but let's keep McDonald's open.
Don't even get me started. Ooh. All right. Hey, by the way, did you see God's Chicken jumped up to number 2?
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yeah. There's there's tens of thousands of locations and it's not that far behind McDonald's. And this was predicted a few years ago. They've jumped over Taco Bell and Burger King. And there's tens of thousands of locations of McDonald's, and there's only like 2,800 locations of God's Chicken, and they're at number 2.
Yeah.
And
they're killing it.
And they're only open 6 days a week.
Right.
Well, and I can tell you this, coming from that industry, and my wife still, at least works for a consulting firm that works in that space. Like, revenues are not down at fast food nearly as far as predicted. They were predicting, at least the companies we're exposed to, they were predicting like 20, 30% down. They're only 3% down.
Yeah. I went through the drive-through at Chick-fil-A with my daughter the other day. They had it going on. They're happy. They're like, boom, we're out. We're happy to be working. And that's pushing people through.
Yep. And so what they found, at least at the restaurants I'm exposed to through my wife, is, and it's predictable when you think about it, the average ticket cost has gone down. So people are eating less, but the frequency of tickets has gone way up. So people are eating out more frequently. They're just not spending as much money each time, which it makes sense.
I find this to be humorous. The holding company that has most of the buffet style restaurants under their umbrella is called FAT. Yeah. I think that's hysterical. I want to meet the guy that said this is what we got to have our holding company but they were
the PA.
Well, no, it's not actually. It's all capital letters too. Like they didn't even mess around. It's FAT Inc. They're basically they're like that industry is going away after this.
Yeah, one of the most
on a decline.
One of the most popular ones, at least in the West Coast, used to be called Soup Plantation. Now it was called Fresh Choice. They're gone. They're done.
Yeah, wasn't Sweet Tomatoes another one big out there on the West? Mm-hmm. I know the thing, and it's just people aren't eating like that anymore.
No,
people don't graze.
No, nope.
But guys, it's that like I was like, I just love somebody that has a sense of irony. I pulled up behind a Prius, and it had a bumper sticker on it that said "Cool Prius," underneath it said "No one ever." I'm like, I love it when people are self-aware and can generate irony on themselves. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Makes the world a happier place. I was actually happier after being behind that guy in his little Prius, because he was just like, I used to have a buddy of mine in high school that he would tell girls he had a vet. He had a Chevette, not a Corvette. For those of you that are old enough, the Chevette is what's the thing that's small? The little Fiat 500. It's not much bigger than the Fiat 500, and it was a horrible car. And he would tell people all the time, "I got a vet." They get out there, "You lie to me." "Nope, it's a Chevette, just not a Corvette." You assumed. I love that. That's to me that makes makes my
dirty gold digger.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Not so much in high school, I would say, but I think maybe in training.
Oh man! Speaking of vets and grazing, I think it's time for me to go do some farming, my friends.
Have a fun with your bucolic endeavors today.
Oh, yeah, it's a beautiful day. It's going to be nice and warm out, sunny. I'm going outside.
Get to it. Get at it.
Everybody, enjoy your week, and don't be fearful. Get out there and breathe.
Yeah. Do you some wonders.
Inhale.
Absolutely.
Out, everyone.
All right.
Bye, buddy.
See you, my friends.
Bye.